For more, I want to bring in two Army veterans, Congressman Bill Pascrell, Democrat of New Jersey, with us from Englewood Cliffs, and with us from Washington, former VA official Brandon Friedman, who completed combat tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Brandon, allow me to start by thanking you and the Congressman for your service. But Brandon, when you hear the litany of challenges facing our vets today, is it not clear that we are falling seriously short of fulfilling what the President described as our duty to our troops?
Well, Martin, first, thanks for having me on today. Historically, we have fallen far short of what we owe veterans in this nation. However, that said, we've come a long way in the last 4 or 5 years in this administration. A lot of the things that you mentioned, while they're not good, for example, the backlog still stands at about 400,000 claims. That has dropped by 34% in the last 8 months. Unemployment is also on the way down. So while we have a long way to go, we've seen a lot of progress in the last several years, and hopefully we can keep that up, because we certainly do owe this to our veterans. We absolutely do. Congressman, the President today pledged that our troops will be, and I'm quoting him, the best cared for, the best treated, respected veterans in the world. But when you see 900,000 veterans living in households that rely on nutrition assistance, close to 1.5 million without health insurance, it seems for your colleagues across the aisle, opposing the President is more important than supporting things like affordable health care and food assistance that vets desperately need.
Well, there's not enough people on the other side, in all honesty, Martin, to say or appreciate what you just said. Look, we all talk about veterans. We pat them on the back. We say thank you for your service. But when you look at those numbers, about how many are on food stamps, 22 a day commit suicide. That means we're not paying attention, the latter fact. We're not paying attention to the medical, the mental needs of these soldiers that are coming home. So many have fallen through the crack since 2001. I mean, even New Jersey, 44,000 New Jerseyans have been called into action either in Iraq or in Afghanistan. And we let them fall through the cracks up until about 3 or 4 years ago, until we're trying to do something about those mental problems which exist whether you're in the service or outside the service. And the post-traumatic stress disorder has been really a disaster. The civilian part of it's been way ahead of the armed forces. It's only been lately that the DOD has really started to catch up. And when you have to wait 270 days to get your disability check, there is something dramatically wrong. And when you cut a budget across the lines...
It's a crime, sir. It's a crime. It's a crime against these men and women.
It's probably worse than a crime. It's immoral, because we send them out to fight. We send our sons and daughters and our neighbors to Vietnam, to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to wherever. And they're the finest group of men and women that we have in this nation. They stand up for our country every day, and we have to beg one another to reach out to them and welcome them back, give them shelter so many don't have, offer them a job where they have a shot, or give them some kind of education, which we fought for, as you know, Martin, got bipartisan support finally in the new GI Bill. Look, we've got a long way to go. You know, the one thing I hate to hear, and Brandon, this is no slur on you, but I hate to hear, well, at least we're going in the right direction. Man, that boils me, because we should get this right from note one, because we made an obligation to those people who went to the service. I went into the service. They went into the service and fought in the wars. They were on the front lines. And it would seem to me it's more than an obligation. It's a contractual obligation which we have failed to uphold.
Brandon, you have to respond to that, because when you think about it, look, when we think about the Veterans Administration specifically and the backlog itself, it hasn't gone away. I mean, is the VA doing enough?
Well, I hate to say this, but we are on the right track, because when you look at this problem was decades in the making, literally. It was only seriously, they only seriously moved to deal with this in the last 4 or 5 years with this administration when they moved to automate the disability claims processing system. They now have that in place. So now veterans are filing their claims electronically. This was not in place a few years ago. And so people often underestimate the complexity of the Department of Veterans Affairs and the task and what it's tasked with. Getting that process in place to automate the claim system took 2 to 3 years. And so now that it has been rolled out to all the regional processing offices,
Brandon,
we saw the backlog peak in March, and now it's dropped 30% in 8 months.
But Brandon, it doesn't seem very complicated to send men and women out into battle, and yet it's incredibly complicated to ensure that their benefits can trigger the moment they return. I just don't understand the inconsistency.
This is a mentality, Martin, from the last administration. It is a mentality. Not only weren't we prepared to go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, we weren't prepared to take those veterans when they came home and take good care of them. It's only been the last few years that DOD caught up to their obligations and responsibilities to those soldiers coming back with post-traumatic stress disorder. You can't say that this was done from 2001 or 2003 because it wasn't, Brandon. And you're right to some degree that the past administrations are the presents. I don't want to hear about the past administrations. We're here now. We got to deal with it. We got to face up to it, and you got to fight for it. And it can't be part of any budget deal what you make between now and January. I say that this is something that we got to put on the line and say we're not going to take any back steps. Period.
Right, but you have to understand the complexity of the problem. This problem was decades in the making. And the previous administration, as much as you might not want to hear about it, the previous administration did not take steps to plan for this. They started two wars.
Yes.
And they sent hundreds of thousands of troops to war, and they did not plan for this. This administration has come in, and they have taken steps to modernize this system, and it has taken several years. As you keep saying, it's only in the last several years that we've made this progress. But that's what it takes. When I came into VA, I completely underestimated the complexity of the organization and how deep these problems went. And I think a lot of people do. But now that, you might not want to hear it, but now we are on the right track. The unemployment rate is dropping. The backlog is literally plummeting in the last 8 months. The department has hired 1,600 mental health clinicians in the last year. So this department has made more progress in the last couple of years than you had seen in any period up to this point.
I think that's right. And Congressman, we know that the number of veterans seeking help from the VA has soared, even as the suicide rate has also risen. Would it not be more prudent to get more veterans' health coverage, including mental health benefits,
Absolutely,
as the Affordable Care Act would do?
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate that from 2001 to 2008 and 2009, very little was done in the area of mental health. Very little. We did not put money into the budget concerning traumatic brain injury until 2008 with the great help of the former and late great Congressman Jack Murtha. And a few of us got together. I've been working on this for 12 years. I've been working on this before Iraq and Afghanistan. And we've got to make sure that we understand what are the implications. How many have fallen through the cracks? How many did not get any help when they got out of the service? And where are they now, doing harm to themselves, to their families, and to the rest of society? And then we look back and say, what are the consequences of this? There are great consequences. We can do something about it. We have the power. We have the authority. As complex as it is, Brandon, we got to be doing much better than we're doing.
Congressman Bill Pascrell and Brendan Friedman, thank you both for joining us, and I wish to thank you on behalf of our broadcast, both of you, for your service to this nation.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Coming up.